All right, hello YouTube. Welcome to number 12 of Wizard and Glass's book club series. And it's been a few weeks since our last episode, but I guess we'll get into the intro and stuff, or get into the actual podcast side before we get into all the scheduling, because there is something to announce on that, because I believe we discussed some of the things during our geekery episode, because it didn't come up till between the episodes. So you all knew that this one was delayed, but we do have a little bit more shenanigans afoot. So let's go ahead and hit the intro and get started.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, the Dark Tower series, as well as the extended King universe, which, because all things serve the
beam.
tower and the beam, indeed. And my name is Tad.
I'm Peter.
And we're here for episode 12 of the book club series going through Wizard and Glass. God knows what the actual count would be if we had a numerical count of all the book clubs.
That'd be interesting to find out.
I think we'd easily be in at least approaching 100, if not over 100.
Yeah,
because I know we had a few of the longer books were in the mid 20s. So I think it'd be a safe assumption that we were probably hovering around 100. But either way, number 12 for Wizard and Glass. I think there was some shenanigans on the last episode last book club where I had the wrong number on the slides. So I do apologize for that. But this one should be matching across the board as number 12. Let's go ahead and dive in real quick to the introduction stuff real quick, announcement stuff. First, spoiler warning. There is no spoiler warning until the very, very end of the episode. You will hear a very clear thing before we move into that, as well as a screen will change if you're here on YouTube side. These are the safe episodes to listen to if you've not finished the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series. We stay where we're at or before. We don't jump ahead except for a spoiler section, and I guess we could probably say that I don't think there is a spoiler section for this episode. Neither of us had any notes in the for spoiler stuff.
Not this time.
It seems like a lot of this, especially as we dove into this flashback for Wizard and Glass, it seems like a lot of it's very self-contained. I mean, it can't say that is going to prove through all the way. I'm sure at some point we're going to have some more spoilery stuff, but a lot of times the spoiler section, we would like to kind of see how what we're talking about connects to, later things or whatever. But that hasn't been as necessary since we've gotten into this backstory of young Roland here. Next up, if you want to find us, you can find us on anywhere you find podcasting, including Apple Podcasts. Stream us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, any podcasting service of your choice. On any of those, if you could subscribe, rate, and review the show, we would appreciate that. That keeps Mr. Blaine the Mono happy and keeps him from torching Peter and I with blue lightning, giving us lightning teeth like Luke Skywalker. And then if you want to join the show live, you can do that over here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Not only that, but all of our live streams do stay in the archive there. We've been doing those for a number of years now, so you can find old episodes on here as well. But yeah, if you want to come on over here to the YouTube side, like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. That way, if schedules move around like we're in the middle of right now, as a matter of fact, this episode should have been a week ago.
Yep.
That's kind of how you'll find it, as well as I usually post one of the little text posts on YouTube as well to let y'all know when something's changing. But the notifications are a good way to know kind of when we're going live. If you want to be here and part of the conversation in the live chat, which of course emojis are always welcome.
No. No.
And then the hub at the center of the wheel of the Dark Tower Palaver universe is darktowerpalaver.com. It has links to all things Dark Tower Palaver. So go over there. We just wrapped March Insanity not too long ago. We have questions for new listeners. We have the show notes. There isn't necessarily show notes for book club episodes, but if you're listening to the roundtables, those show notes are over there at darktowerpalaver.com. If you want to support the show, you can do that over at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. I know in the Discord server you get access to there was some Stephen King quiz action going around. I haven't had a chance to do it yet myself, but
I haven't either.
It seems like everyone was getting 100%. Every single time I feel like I look at it, I don't have like the minutes to at that moment. And then I forget when I do have time. So I do need to circle back and do that myself. Although, of course, I will bring shame, to myself if I were to get less than 100%, since everyone else in there is, definitely getting 100% on that.
There's no shame in that.
I don't know. Depends. What is the name of the boy in Cujo? I don't know.
Peter.
Yeah, Peter. I don't know. All right. And then if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know the best ways to do that.
Best way to reach us is through email. It's show@darktowerpalaver.com. And then we still got our Twitter. We're refusing to call it X. It's still Twitter.
Yes.
It's @DarkTowerPod. That's @DarkTowerPod. And then we got our Blue Sky account. It's @DarkTowerPalaver.bsky.social. And then our Facebook is facebook.com/DarkTowerPalaver. And our Instagram is DarkTowerPalaver, all one word with no spaces in there. And then check out our merchandise. It's tpublic.com/user/DarkTowerPalaver. Pick yourself up a #TadIsTerrible sticker, pillow, hoodie, T-shirt.
Or the regular logo
Mouse pad.
if you're not into slander.
It's not slander, sir. It is 100% confirmed. So...
Oh, I don't know about that. But yeah, that is the social media stuff, and then I will mention the schedule. I already kind of alluded to it. So, like I said, last week should have been this episode, so it got delayed a week. But just to add even more confusion, next week I will be. Actually, it does actually seem like I won't actually be in the theaters. I will just be sleeping because it looks like the marathon for Star Wars starts late the night of the 3rd, and then I'm only watching the original 6 because I'm not 20 whatever anymore, like the last time I did a crazy-ass marathon.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if I can handle that long in the theaters. Plus, I've also seen the sequel trilogy in theaters not all that long ago, whereas the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy I haven't seen since 1997, 1999, 2002, and 2005. That's all been a long time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing those again. But I'm doing that. They're doing it for the May the 4th, which means I will be punchy-ass tired and probably sleeping about the time we'd normally be doing the show. So that one is actually being delayed till the 11th. So even though usually after moving an episode, we end up having two that butt up against each other. That will be happening, but just not next week on the 4th.
Right.
So it'll actually feel normal where we have 2 weeks after this episode till the next episode. But then it'll be the 11th and the 18th will be our the two that butt together that get us back on schedule. So that is the schedule as it's coming up. Also, I wanted to point out a funny thing that happened. There was somebody posted on one of the Dark Tower, I think it was Dark Tower or Stephen King subreddits, about Shimi showing up in Gunslinger. And I went in and I'm like, no. I'm like, he gets remembered twice in Gunslinger, but he doesn't show up. I'm like, you're thinking of Sheb. Which obviously is here in Wizard and Glass. And then the person was like, whatever. But then somebody else came in and was trying to be like whatever and saying that Sheb was Shimi's dad. And
could be.
No, Stanley.
Oh, the bartender. Right, that's what it is.
And it just made me laugh because literally we were just on the heels of doing this episode where we covered, because all the proof is in the episode, or the chunk we just covered, because Stanley steps up and in his internal monologue it says,
I got to step up and try. He might be my son.
He may very well be my son. And then also down the road, Stanley Ruiz, we end up seeing Shimi. In fact, if you look him up on any of the stuff, it says Shimi Ruiz. So I think that all indications are it's his father. And then also Sheb's last name is McCurdy, which is also in the section that we covered last episode. So it was just really funny because it was all so fresh in my mind. And I'm like, I don't want to like come off like I'm like this know-it-all. It's literally that it's just so damn fresh in my head because
we literally just covered
We just covered this. So it just made me laugh because there was one person that kind of had that whole like I'm not wrong no matter what mentality. Was the second guy, not the original guy. The original guy's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, and then I told him like where to go to read the proof of what I was saying. So.
25 for Wizard and Glass, not Wizard and Glass, Wastelands. 22 for Drawing of the Three, and only 5 for Gunslinger.
Oh yeah, it's
So
short book.
Short book. So that comes to a total of 52.
Really? Wow.
52 book clubs. Is all.
Man.
And then we're on number 12
here.
So, which our document says 11.
Yeah, something's wrong on which.
Where we have our notes says book club number 11.
God, I think we're on now.
Are we on 12 or are we on 11? Tab?
No, I think I pulled up the actual podcast website, because the other thing that annoys me is I just found out also darktowerpalaver.com they updated something on the website side, and it broke the link to our podcast hosting site. So probably the last couple months worth of episodes, the episode post where it shows like the audio has not been coming to our website. I've got it reconnected, so this one will show up there. Okay. But I don't know in terms of trying to figure out how to get the old ones to repost that didn't post. I don't know. So I haven't even been able to go to darktowerpalaver.com and get like truth in terms of the episodes, but I went to the place we post our episodes, and the last one was 11. So
this will be 64th book club for us.
Good old Nintendo 64.
Okay.
I love that number. All right, so we are currently in part 2 of this book. This one is cut up into 4 parts. Each of the parts have obviously chapters in them. The first one and the last one are really short. The middle 2 have 10 chapters. We are currently in chapter 6 of part 2. Part 2 is subtitled Susan. Chapter 6 is subtitled Shimi, and we are actually going to be jumping over into chapter 7 during the course of this episode. We are starting out in subchapter 8. We pretty much left off right after the showdown at the Traveler's Rest. The fan-voted Dark Tower Palaver March Insanity winner for Best Dark Tower Moment. We just finished that last time. So here we are. Time to deal with the repercussions. What happened? What happens after now?
Yep.
We know when Shimi ran out that Avery was coming.
Sheriff Avery.
Yes.
Let's not, besmirch the good sheriff.
Might want to. He seems like kind of a shady fella. We've seen a couple conversations with him that make us think that he's not on the up and up.
He is definitely up to no good. That's for sure.
Yeah, indeed. As well as a lot of the people in this town.
Uh-huh.
I just feel like if this were a cartoon, you'd see a lot of shifty eyes.
A lot of twirling of mustaches.
Indeed. So let's dive on into subchapter 8. And starting off here, I have a line directly from the book here, and it is, quote, "This is a nice mess, isn't it?" Avery speaking, no one answering. He hadn't expected they would, not if they knew it was good for them. So that's a fun little setup there. Kind of the castigating parent is what he's seeming like right off the bat here. And then getting into just kind of like recapping here, the jail would not have been big enough for the 6 participants in the night's events, as well as the rotund sheriff. So he herded them to the town gathering hall. The empty hall echoed with the fluttering of pigeons in the rafters and the ticking of the grandfather clock behind the podium. Have you had a lot of experience with grandfather clocks? Just to pause, I don't have a note for this, but any like family have a lot of. So my one grandma has like a lot of like. She has a couple grandfather clocks and a lot of wall clocks that tick. Yeah. And I remember going over there and like, we got used to it at a certain point, but I remember every time somebody strange would come over, they'd be like, what the hell, man? There's like clicking everywhere in this place. Yeah. So this is, I know what this is like.
I had a clock up in my apartment for a little bit, and someone came and spent the night, and we're like, we get up in the morning, we're like, oh, did everything go okay? They're like, yeah, but your damn clock was so loud. Took it down. We've never put up another one.
Really?
Digital only.
Oh, and see, my grandma's isn't just like, because some of like the normal wall clocks have like a slight tick to them, and at night you'd hear it.
That's what we had. It's just like a normal wall clock. I think it was like a Nightmare Before Christmas one or something, because my wife loves that movie. Yeah. And so it was like just the second hand.
And see, my grandma's, it was like the ones that have like the pendulum.
The big.
They'll ding on the half hour once, and then they'll ding for the hour.
What you see in Franny's mom's sitting room.
That's the kind of stuff my grandma had. She had a big grandfather clock, which are the ones that stand up on the ground. She had 2 of those, one upstairs, one downstairs. But then she probably had wall clocks, at least 1 or 2 on every other floor as well.
Any cuckoo?
So, no, my other grandma had a cuckoo clock though as a kid. So
did you enjoy it or? Or no?
I mean, when I was really young, yeah.
You're like, hey,
yeah,
cuckoo.
yeah, indeed. So yeah, I definitely know what they're talking about, the clicking of a clock
Yeah.
in a room. So the room was plain, but it was an inspired choice because for generations, this is where town folks and landowners had come to make decisions and pass laws, and occasionally to send troublemakers west. The room had a serious feel in its moon-glimmered darkness, and Roland thought that even Jonas felt it a bit. If nothing else, it invested Avery with the authority that he would not have otherwise been able to convey. The room was filled with what they called bareback benches, oak pews with no padding or cushion for back or butt. I just don't like the sound of that.
It's church.
But it's still, for God's sake.
It's church.
Get some padding, for God's sake.
That's a lot of church pews.
Well, this is a town hall. I mean,
Yeah.
Liven it up. Get some padding, for God's sake.
No, the idea is that you make it uncomfortable so you get out of there faster.
That's
Don't make
probably
it comfortable because then you get long-winded people.
Yeah, that's true. I have to imagine some long-winded people it wouldn't matter though. So there were 60 in total, 30 on each side of the wide center aisle. The coffin hunters are sitting on the left side of the aisle, and our boys are sitting on the right side. Reynolds and Depape looked sullen and embarrassed, while Jonas looked remote and composed. The boys were quiet. Roland had given Cuthbert a look, which he hoped Bert would read as one smart remark, and I'll rip the tongue out of your head. And he thought that the message was received. Bert had stowed his idiotic lookout out of sight, and that was probably a good sign. And
Yeah, good old Bert, the lookout.
I feel like generally speaking, like that death look, it's a parent thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I have to imagine, these are 14-year-old boys. I have to imagine that Roland has refined this look over the years, which is crazy to think about for a 14-year-old.
Well, especially when you think about what he's grown up with. I mean, you got Court, impression on him, and I can tell you right now, Court probably has the worst stink eye of any parent ever. Just like, whoosh, like that whip sound crack when he looks at you, and the boys go and fall over dead, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it just makes me laugh because it just seems like this should be something for like a parent or an older person, not for a 14-year-old kid to his contemporary. Like that just tells you everything you need to know about their relationship.
Well, it goes to show like where Roland is at as a leader already.
That too, yeah.
I mean, this is his first mission and everything, and we don't even know like really truly like what the mission is and everything yet, right? Because I know I missed a few book clubs there. So
yeah, well, his dad told him ultimately we're getting you out of
right.
We're taking you off the board essentially to keep you safe.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's a hidey mission. Just hide away.
But Roland is in charge.
Yes,
so.
absolutely. Because I mean, he's ultimately
he is an apprentice.
Yeah, he's an apprentice gunslinger, which is very, very unusual. What did Court say to him? You're a couple years too young. Even your father is the youngest, and you're a few years younger than him. Like, and he asks him to don't do it. Basically,
he gave him
times.
one last chance. He said, "This is your last chance to withdraw," and he's like, by the way, you were younger than your dad by a couple of years. I'm giving you one last chance. It's like, how many last chances are we going to give him? And it's like, oh, he's that young. Okay.
And what I loved about, I know this is backtracking. What I loved about that is it felt like there was like a formal thing there.
Yeah.
Question and response. Like it felt like that was like a thing that had been built for generations.
And has to be done that way every time.
And Court was breaking it.
Yep.
Because he knew that this isn't the right move. You're I don't know. So it shows.
But he still went through with it.
He
in
did
the end because that's what's required of him. Bondsman.
Yeah, indeed. So the sharp cut from the Traveler's Rest to this just feels perfect to me. I know the place had quieted down due to the showdown, but before that, it was a very loud and rowdy place. This place seems as quiet as a crypt. Like the rest, even in the tenser silence, it feels like it may have been a full and warm place. This feels like a very cold, empty place, and it fits the mood of this moment quite well, I think. But that's kind of I don't know. King's not really saying a ton. I feel like it's kind of between the lines, but I just feel like there's a difference. Even in the Traveler's Rest, like you probably imagine there was fires for the light and stuff, but it also had warmth.
There was a piano playing, and then it got cut off and everything.
Yeah,
everyone's drinking and eating.
This just feels like
you got whores going on in the background over here. A horn going on, and so it's a bar.
And this feels like courtrooms. You have a courtroom, and there's a cold, impersonal feeling to every courtroom, and that's kind of what this is feeling like to me. So it's just kind of a cool juxtaposition because yes, we technically saw Shimi walk out to run into Avery, but outside of that, we've just spent the last how many subchapters in that room.
Yeah.
That was, and then suddenly it was just like sharp cut. Like we don't see them walking. We don't see, and it's just suddenly here we are.
There's not even like the decision to go to the town hall because it's more open than the jail and everything.
It's
so
just
it's
we're
like,
immediately there, and I just feel
just
like
there.
it's perfect. I could see it on screen almost type thing. It's kind of
it'd be the transition between an episode, right? Like Shimi running out, running into the
Probably.
sheriff, credits.
yeah,
Start of the next episode, we're in the town hall, right?
yeah, probably,
Yeah.
yeah. That sounds about right.
We got 2 comments in the live chat here on YouTube. I'm going to kind of paraphrase a little bit because we do have a spoiler warning in effect. It seems like Roland, often expects Q3 to embarrass him or publicly make a fool of himself. So,
Yeah,
like, it's just, like, expected from Roland.
yeah.
It's, like, built in with Cuthbert.
And it's the perfect shows the juxtaposition of the two types of people they are, too, right?
Yeah.
Roland's a certain kind of person that we're pretty familiar with by now, and Cuthbert, I think we saw a bit of him in the first book. We've seen a little bit of him in this one, and I think we just understand kind of who he is as a character.
We did get one really good example of Bert embarrassing himself. Is that he made the face or he made a hand gesture behind Court's back,
and he saw
and
him.
he's like, how'd you see me? He's like, I saw it in this maggot's eye. He saw the reflection in Roland's eye, like,
and hit him.
then turned around and hit Bert with it. And then Baraki says, we don't always see Bert doing it too much, embarrassing Roland. He means. But we're not privy to all the other times, and that's true. We don't see a ton of Cuthbert. It's in this book and book 1, right?
Yeah. So I think these moments are great because I think they're really showing like it ultimately is showing you what does that relationship look like.
Yeah.
They're both around 14. Chances are they probably known each other their entire lives.
They have known each other their entire lives. They say that in book 1.
So it's ultimately like, okay, what does the 14 years look like? Well, some of these little hints here are kind of showing us what that probably looked like.
I love the idea of the big coffin hunter sitting here in the pews. Like we just talked about the pews being hard and uncomfortable and everything like that. I love the idea of big coffin hunters who were just talking that they were going to murder Shimi for spilling alcohol on his boots. Like I need entertainment. I'm going to kill this guy.
Yeah.
They're sitting in these pews like schoolboys getting yelled at by the headmaster or principal. Like I've been picturing them in like the shorts and the high socks, and it's like, yes, sir.
Looking like a guitarist from AC/DC.
Yeah, exactly.
So my next note, the fluttering pigeons in the rafters reminds me of the stand with the first gathering in Boulder.
Yeah, where they scare him off when they cheer.
Multiple times,
Yeah.
and then they finally just skedaddle out of there. It just, I don't know. I don't think that's something that we see in our society very often. I have been to some larger stores like Walmarts and stuff where like you'll see a bird here and there.
Yeah.
That gets in usually through like the garden area. I've also seen it in Costco.
Home Depot and Lowe's.
Yeah.
They have like the big garden centers that are open.
Yeah. So you'll every once in a while you'll see a bird fluttering through the inside,
Yeah.
but it's nothing like this. This definitely feels like a different time.
And it's also interesting that they let them roost in there.
Yeah.
They're like now, in our culture, in our society, it's like, no, birds are dirty, and everything. But here it's just like, yeah, fine, whatever.
Yeah. Well, it does weird me out when I'd see them in Walmart because it's like there's food there.
Yeah.
Like, are they pecking at the fruit and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know. It's Home Depot, fine. Like, what are they really going to hurt? But,
Yeah.
I mean, you might have
Not
to,
something that you're going to be eating.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, they picked at a plant that I'm going to plant in my garden.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Next up, recapping what they do in this room and ending it on sending troublemakers west is a good way to make us a little bit more nervous about all this.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah, exactly. And like you kind of, again, it's like a courtroom. It's like when you're in a courtroom, there's kind of there's seriousness to it. You're not going into a courtroom like a bar or a fun place. Like, no, when you're in a courtroom, it's for not good reasons.
You can end up in prison if you act like that in a courtroom.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Also, I like the calling out kind of like what you're talking about, like setting the mood. The very first line is he hadn't expected that they would, not if they knew what was good for them. Absolutely establishing Avery's authority over the situation.
Yeah, indeed. And then next up, also Clay and Roy being sullen and embarrassed while Jonas being distant but composed makes you think they know what they were in for from him when he gets them alone.
Yeah, and I added a note onto yours here. It's like kids getting yelled at by a teacher or a principal in front of their parents.
Yeah.
Which we both have had happen to us. That the real butt will...
Who, me?
Shut up.
Who, me?
Shut up.
I don't know about that.
I've heard stories about you lying to police officers as a junior high kid, so don't even.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Troublemaker. But they know that the real butt whooping's coming later when mom and dad get them alone, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm picturing here is the please don't stop yelling at us because then you're gonna leave me alone with Daddy Jonas and Jonas is gonna spank me.
Yeah, the one that was always, and I know it sounds different in this era, but for me it was like restaurants. You know, we were taught to always behave in restaurants, and if not, you were either getting brought to the bathroom or being brought out to the car.
Yeah, come on, we're going outside.
And
it's like,
good things don't happen out there.
Nope.
For ill-behaved little children. All right. What do you got that. You're up there. And then my last note, I love how Roland feels he has to communicate to Cuthbert to keep his mouth shut.
Yeah.
Again, it just speaks to their relationship. And like the thing is like there's a familiarity there. Like, right, like you meet someone for the first time, like they're not gonna be able to discern what looks mean. But like you and I, like we can trade looks and kind of communicate.
Anyone who's had any kind of a relationship for a certain amount of time, me and my wife, even me and my daughter have passed looks, like judgy looks, like we're out in public and someone does something and I look at her and she looks back at me and it's just like the what? Really? Did she just say that? You know, kind of thing. Everyone has that. And these guys have known each other since birth.
Yeah.
You know, like they talk about it in book 1. They've been running around since they were babies, you know, learning how to walk and stuff.
But also, doesn't it speak something to Cuthbert that Roland feels he has to warn him via the look?
He doesn't trust him to do it himself.
He doesn't trust him to know, like, hey, this is a serious fucking situation.
Shut the hell up.
Like, you would hope that maybe he would give him the benefit of the doubt to know, like, let's be quiet.
Giving you a little Richie Tozier vibe there, maybe?
That's and you know, that's
beep Cuthbert.
That's probably not too far off, and also both are very beloved characters in their respective stories.
Because people like loudmouth Tad.
Well, unless they have to be around them too much. All right, next up, Avery repeats a nice mess again and sighed with a liquor scented breath.
Yeah, we got to remember they all just came from like that ball, that gala where everyone got drunk and was dancing and having a good time.
Yeah,
and everything.
It was the after party.
It's the after party where the things went sour.
Yeah, he was sitting on the edge of the stage with his short legs hanging down and looking at all six of them with disgusted wonder. Deputy Dave opened the door, comes in, disheveled looking, holding a mug in one hand and what Roland thinks is a birch bark in the other hand. They both discuss if it was twice boiled, and Deputy Dave says it was per instructions. Avery takes the mug and Dave pours the birch bark into the mug. Avery calls it foul and nasty, and Jonas asks what it is. And Avery said hangover powder from the old witch who lives up on the coos, and asks if he knows where he means, and gives Jonas a knowing look that Jonas ignores, but Roland thinks he saw it. And wonders what it might mean, and kind of notes to himself another mystery. Depape looks up at the word coos, but went back down to sucking his wounded finger, which,
ow!
But isn't like coos, and his head pops up, huh? And then he goes back to it. So that fits what we've seen of him so far. And then beyond him, Reynolds sat grimly with the cloak drawn about him. Roland asks if the powder worked, and Avery said that it did, but you always pay a price with witch's medicine. This helps hangovers, but grips the bowels something fierce and gives you the farts. He went back to his former gravity, but the mood in the room had lightened a smidge, which does go to the old axiom that farts are always funny.
Yes.
He asked what they were to do about this business. He said that they had the mayor's men on one side and the affiliations men on the other, but he pauses as he calls the affiliation side men. He then calls it two powder kegs with one fat sheriff between them. He tells them to speak up. No need to be shy. They weren't in Coral's Horden just a little bit ago. They said nothing, and then he finally said something that didn't surprise Roland much, and it's exactly what you'd expect from a man like Avery. He said we were just going to forget it. He expected an uproar and intended to handle it, but none came. So, gotta love those. You always see those in life too, where
we're just gonna let it go.
Someone expects like a reaction, and then when they don't get it, it's like, oh, all right, cool, everyone's listening.
Yeah.
So my notes here, not very good of Avery to call out the coos being known by the coffin hunters. Maybe he doesn't give the boys credit enough to see through his bullshit, but Roland did, even if he doesn't know what it means exactly.
I wonder if it's something where, because we've seen that the coffin hunters went up to the coos.
Yeah.
And they gave her something, and we're like, whoa, this is a powerful something. It's the pink ball, right? Because we may not know, he may not know, but what if he does know, and this is his way of letting the coffin hunters know that, yeah,
I feel like
I know what's going on.
I feel like we may have. Maybe it was one you weren't here, but I feel like we covered it in that when they had that meeting amongst the town top dogs and the coffin hunters. So I think we've been given the impression that like he knows, and that's where it's just like he should know well enough.
It's
not
more
to
of like,
mention it.
oh, okay, so he shouldn't be mentioning it. So it's more of like, yeah, I got it from the coos.
Wink. Yeah, you know what that is, don't you?
Wink.
Like it's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
come
again,
on, dude, don't be more obvious.
But then again, they do think they're dealing with a bunch of children here. So to his credit, I guess there's at least that. My next note, I like that it is Jonas that asks what the powder is. It just feels like he's the last one you'd expect who would even care at all, let alone to actually ask. So maybe it's him trying to be diplomatic and trying to because we've seen enough of him so far, and it just doesn't feel like he would in a million fucking years give a shit what the hell it was, let alone to ask, right? Because even if he did, we've seen a couple times with him where he's been curious about something. He's not said anything. He just kind of looked curiously.
Notated it away. Maybe I'll look into that later.
Yeah, so it's just very against character for him. So I do think maybe it's him trying to, build some kind of a bridge here and mend things a little bit, even with himself and the sheriff.
Yeah, also maybe he's speaking up because Depape and Reynolds are probably too scared to say anything after the mess they've made.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't want them to speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you get in front of authority, maybe only Jonas speaks for the big coffin hunters. And one of those things where it's like, like you two same thing that Roland's going through with Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Maybe he's got Reynolds and Depape to train to, hey, we get in front of the sheriff or we get in front of the mayor or anything like that. You two shut the hell up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably about right.
Yeah.
Seems a pricey, or seems that a price to pay for witches' cure seems a true axiom in any world.
Yeah,
any world with witches. It seems like kind of the monkey paw effect is kind of always the thing with witches.
I mean, it's not just witches.
If you take this pill, you may have side effects, including anal leakage.
It's like, wait, what?
I mean, yeah, it's
right?
It's just modern day witches, right?
That's what they are, right?
Pharmaceuticals.
I probably should have put this notes.
That reminds me of Roland when he's in our world in book 2, isn't it? When he's going to the pharmacy and he's just expecting like this like enchanted almost like a mystic, and he's like, "This is it." Like,
wait, what is this? Yeah.
Which I love the fish out of water.
It's when he gets the.
It's during the third
poisoning
door.
Yeah, the third door with Jack Mort.
Yeah. But what were you going to say? You didn't have a note?
No, I do have a note here. Probably should have moved this note sooner. I like the pause King inserts when Avery says affiliations ... men ...
Yeah.
goes on.
Yeah.
We got the mayor's men on one side and then the affiliations.
And you can just see how that would be shot on screen too, because you look over and if they don't age them up in the Flanagan series, they'll be 14-year-old boys like that.
Yeah,
that's going to be a funny picture to.
You're going to be looking at kids just a little bit younger, a little bit older than the losers are.
Yeah,
and someone calling them men.
Yeah,
I get why he's acting that way, but it's still kind of funny to me that like. Ooh, it's kind of a slap in the face to the affiliation guys, right?
Kind of like Captain America: Civil War. It's like, what are you, Spider Boy?
Yeah,
because he's a high school kid.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Like how'd you get Spider-Man out of that? You're a child, for God's sake. And then again, my last note. I love that Depape perking up at the word coos.
He just couldn't help himself, could he?
He has a very one-track mind,
yeah.
And that falls right in there. So it cracks me up.
Yeah, we saw that at the bar.
It's like when you you see those like videos where people are like talking and they say something that could be kind of that's what she said, like, and you always see like the husband get that look on their face, And
then you got the wife that kicks him under the table or like elbows him and is like, shut the hell up.
That's exactly what it is. The way I see it there. So Avery said he will not spend the next 3 or 4 months waiting to see who kills who, nor will he take the heat for a stupid fight over a half-witch like Shimi. He then says that he is appealing to their practical natures, as he points out that that he can be their friends or their enemies. He then tells Jonas he does not believe that he would want to cause trouble with the young men from the affiliation, which has been like mother's milk in a father's hands since 50 generations back. Jonas shook his head and smiled thinly. Avery asked the boys if he wanted to get in the way of doing their jobs, and they all shook their heads. He then said that in that case, he wants them all to stand up, face each other, shake hands, and cry each other's pardons. And if they don't, they can all ride out of town before sunrise, if all he cares. He took the mug and drank more, and Roland sees that his hand is trembling slightly, which is no surprise that because it's all ultimately a bluff. The coffin hunters were obviously above his authority, and after tonight, he probably figured the boys were as well. Roland and Jonas stood, and Avery recoiled, expecting more trouble, but none came. Jonas said he was right and offered to shake hands and start over. Roland agreed, but they both apologized and shook hands. The younger members of both groups followed likewise. Roland was nervous when Cuthbert's turn arose because Depape was not one open to humor at the moment, but Bert made no jokes and had no laugh in his voice. Avery was happy and said that he'd shake hands with them and send them on their way, as it was late and he needed his beauty sleep. No one laughed at his joke.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the subchapter. So my notes here. I love Avery trying to play tough here. Quote, I can be your friend or your enemy. It's just so clear this dude is a soft coward and he's all talk.
And he knows that he doesn't have as much authority as the coffin hunters.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, very clearly, King even calls it out to point it out to us. Like, we know that he's down on the totem pole.
And it says that even after tonight, he doesn't know if he has authority over the boys. So it's really not even necessarily like the coffin hunters know higher up people in the town, and that's what puts him out of his authority. What puts them out of his authority is their ability.
Yeah.
And now with the boys showing their ability, ultimately it comes down to he really has all he has sway over is the weak and whatever. Like, he doesn't have any sway over
any of these six.
No. He's no Wyatt Earp.
No.
Let's say. Him appealing to the coffin hunters about the affiliation is funny because we as readers have already seen that they are aligned with Farson, as is Avery, Thorin, and Reimer.
Okay. So we do know that Avery is aligned with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has been a minute since I've read the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
Especially this book.
And it was one of those couple episodes that you were not with us. So yeah, that was covered. There was a clandestine meeting after one of the events. I don't remember which one it was. Where they talked about maybe it was after the party. It was in between the party and the Traveler's Rest, I think. Where they meet together. They talk about
literally
it.
the episode right before I came back.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that has been covered. That there's a shenanigans there. So it is funny that he's like, oh, you don't want to mess with the affiliation, do you?
Yeah. Which is why my note here, I think it's the empty threat that if they don't drop it and shake hands to ride out of town by sunrise is so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's just like, why would you make that if you were Avery? Like, imagine if Roland stood up and said, no, we can't let this go. They'd be smirched our honor. Imagine what would Avery do at that point? Like, dude, that was risky for Avery to take that on.
Yeah, I think that probably his badge does, give him some leeway, because ultimately he has to say that, I think, if nothing else, for appearances.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is appearances. He may be weak in some aspects, but he can't appear weak, or I don't know. He might even be self-deluding himself ultimately, where he thinks that I'm still the sheriff here or whatever. So
maybe one of the things that he's doing here is hoping to make a name for himself a little bit more.
Yeah.
Hey, I settled down the trouble between the coffin hunters and the affiliation boys. I mean, man.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what their thought processes were at this moment. Do they understand? We saw with some of the way that King wrote that this is going to be a legendary thing.
Yeah.
That eventually there's going to be 50 times the amount of people in the bar allegedly than we're actually there and stuff. Everyone's going to claim to have kicked the gun away, and there's all this stuff.
Yep.
But it's like, I wonder, in his perception right now, mere minutes after it happened, I wonder, does he understand that this is like a legend thing that's going to go on forever? Do you think he does, or do you think he's just?
I think he's looking out for his own skin, and that's all he cares about. He's too drunk to think about that.
Yeah. Not to mention he's not the brightest. Overall, he's not the sharpest cue ball in the rack.
Exactly.
I also love that after all that, when they stand up, he still thinks they're going to kill each other. Dude can't read people very well, as it is clear to us readers, I believe, that everyone's going to agree with to go along with what he's saying here. I don't know that any of us necessarily believe that it's a truthful thing, but I think in this moment they're all just going to shake hands. I don't know. There's enough. I just reading the room myself. That's the way I read it. So for him to recoil when they stand up, I'm like, dude, this guy is fucking clueless,
Yeah.
man. Kind of goes with what I just said. He's not the smartest.
Yep.
I also love Roland's constant tension over Bert's humor. You imagine this is a lifelong burden for him, and it really speaks to why he acts the way he does with Eddie.
Yeah. He's dealt with one before.
Yeah, and in those formative years, like you
Yeah.
know, like that's just
Where a big impression is made on young Roland, and it's going to stay, like you said, the impressionistic years and everything, and it's going to stick with him for the rest of his life.
yeah, indeed. So yeah, that's subchapter 8.
So let me start off with subchapter 9. I'm just going to read the whole thing. It's kind of long, so stick with me. When they stepped outside, the moon was down, and the first lightning in the sky had begun to show at the far edge of the clean sea. Mayhap we'll meet again, Si, Jonas said. Mayhap we will, Roland said, and swung up into the saddle. And that's the subchapter. So, cue the showdown music.
Famous Stephen King, 100-word subchapter.
Yep.
He's really good at that. The one I'll always remember is book 2. There's one subchapter that all it says is something like, and it was no misfire. I think that's it. That's the entire
It's a
subchapter. Oh, I love it. Yeah. And then my note, I feel like King doesn't even have to clue us in of the subtext between of the words spoken here.
Yeah.
They're speaking the words, but I just don't even think King has to point out to us that this is all bullshit.
Yeah, mayhap we'll meet again. Mayhap we will. Oh, that's not ominous in any way to say to someone who you just threatened to kill.
Yeah,
you know?
it's like the cop that tells the criminal, "I'll catch you later."
Yeah.
type thing. It's
Yeah.
like, I know that's a normal turn of phrase, but when it's a cop saying that to a criminal, there's a little bit more to that.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, David says I think there's another one in the second book where he's trying to convince Eddie that he's real. It just says he believes. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole subchapter.
That's true. Yeah, King's good at it, man. I love it. You know what's funny too is I can't say that I read a shitload of fiction outside of King, but when I do, you don't see subchapters very often. You see chapters.
Yes.
And it's just interesting that King uses that multiple layers.
Yeah.
Because not only does he have subchapters and chapters, but then he also has the parts or the books or whatever it might be. We've seen it throughout this series so far. And it's like that in a lot of King books. So it's just interesting to me because, I've read, even before getting into King heavily when I was younger, I read, novels. I do enjoy them. I enjoy fiction. But yeah, King's... I don't want to say it's entirely unique. There's other people that use subchapters, but I feel like King always uses subchapters.
Yeah.
I feel like if he didn't use subchapters in something, that would be so notable because it'd be like, holy shit, he doesn't use subchapters.
I think one of the ones that he doesn't use subchapters in, I could be wrong. It's been a minute since I've read the physical copy of it. I think Carrie doesn't because it just bounces between the two timelines.
Yeah.
So I think that he just kind of, I don't think does he even have chapters in that book?
Plus, also the novellas probably don't
Yeah.
either. Those are probably just chapters as
Yeah.
well. I don't know. It's been a while since I've read Carrie. I've actually been thinking about that when we just touched on it in the last episode, which was a roundtable. The 50-year anniversary of Carrie just hit. That kind of has it.
That was a really cool looking hardcover.
Yeah, it has me kind of Jones into go and read it again.
It's such a good book.
It's been a number of years since I have read it, so I might have to dive in because that's a fun one too.
It is.
Good old Carrie's mom. I also was thinking about watching the new version again. I think we discussed in that episode.
Yeah, we did.
Where people are asking about it and stuff. Also on there was a subreddit where people are talking about something. The Carrie adaptations came up, and somebody said, are any of them, or which one's the one to watch? And everyone, of course, is saying, the
original.
the De Palma.
Yep.
But I'm like, the De Palma one, of course, it is the better of them. I'm like, but Julianne Moore playing Carrie's mom in the second is worth the price of admission. And I had a couple different people comment going, wait, she's in it? Okay, sold. I'm going to go watch that version now.
It was not, when it came out, that was not the big advertising thing because the actress who played Carrie was a newer name, and so they were pushing her really hard in the marketing and stuff like that.
I think she was kind of a little bit hot. I think she had just come off with some bigger
something,
things
yeah, exactly.
So,
that's what I was meaning. It's like she had just hit it, and then she was going to do a horror film, so it's like a horror film, Carrie.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we're going to use her, and we're going to push this. They weren't using Julianne Moore.
Not much. And so, there's a couple different people that commented on it. We're like, all right, I'll watch that version now, just if nothing else for her. And I'm like, you won't be sorry.
If that's what you're going in looking for is a good performance from Julianne Moore, guess what? Done.
You're always going to get that.
Yep.
All right, so subchapter 10. Let's go jump on over here.
Hopefully it's not as long as 9.
Yeah, so Subchapter 10 starts off. The coffin hunters were staying at the watchman's house about 5 miles out of town. Halfway there, Jonas stopped at a turnout beside the road. The land sharply dropped off to a rocky descent to the sea. He tells Depape to get down off his horse. Depape tries to argue, but Jonas told him again, and he got down. Jonas then tells him to take off his glasses, and Depape again tries to ask what this is about. Jonas cuts him off and says that if he leaves them on, or he can leave them on if he wants them broken. It's up to him. Depape bit his lip hard, but took off his glasses, and they were barely barely in his hand before Jonas punched him. Depape cried and stumbled backwards towards the drop-off, and Jonas drove towards him and grabbed him just before he went over the edge. Jonas, and he's holding him by the shirt over the edge. Jonas tells him he should throw him over the edge, and asks if he knew how much harm he had done. Depape tries to answer, babbling between he never meant to. It was all just a bit of fun. How are they supposed to know? Kind of just jumbling between all those things.
Yeah.
Jonas relaxed a bit because it is true. How were they supposed to know? If not for tonight, how would they have known at all? And if you looked at it that way, Depape may have done them a favor. People would laugh, but that would not even be that bad because the laughter would stop in due time. Depape apologized to Jonas and tells him to shut up, and he was not going to toss him over because if he did, then he'd have to throw Clay over and then himself over because the boys had gotten the drop on all of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this, I mean, even the first time I read this did not shock me in the least bit.
No.
You know, yeah, I knew this was coming. It's kind of that you know, stricken dog that those two had that mentality of in that room, where it was just like, yeah, and then
Well, it's like I said, they knew they were going to get it later.
yeah.
They knew. That's why they didn't speak up or say shit, because they didn't want to make it worse for themselves.
Yeah.
Because Jonas is the kind of guy, instead of punching him, he'd pull out his gun and put 2 in your head.
Yeah.
And then kick you over the cliff and be like, oh, he rode out of town. He left.
Yeah.
He was too embarrassed. He rode out.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, yeah, Jonas is telling the truth. They know this. They know who they're riding with. And my first note here, I put this before any of your notes. Jonas starts off by not calling Depape by his name. Just says, get down, mister.
Yeah.
And that's where you know you're really, really in trouble. It's when they
Yeah.
don't call you by your normal name. He doesn't, it's not when they call you, you by your first name.
It's the first and middle.
It's when you get
All
the
three.
first, middle, and last name. That's when you're like, ah, shit, I'm dead. Or son, boy, something
Yeah.
like that. And this here, Jonas uses mister. It's like, dude, you fucked up.
Or what would be like even worse, and neither of us dealt with this, but if you
Yeah.
had a shortened version of your name. If your name
Yeah.
was Robert and you were Bobby, and then you
Yeah.
heard Robert.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be like the middle name
Yeah.
with just one word. But
I had a friend who had that, that a shortened name, and he always went by the short name. He went by Nate, but his full name was Nathaniel.
yeah.
So when you heard Nathaniel, it's like, okay, I'm going home. Bye, dude. God be with you.
And then Dave in the chat says if you watch the first one, you get to hear John Travolta say "Get her done."
Yeah.
Yeah, and John Travolta. I would never argue that the new version is better than the De Palma classic, but I will say that it's at least worth a watch. I think to everyone. And then David also said Jonas is a pretty fascinating dude. I kind of wish I knew a little bit more about his backstory. Yeah, he's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
For sure.
David also says a little bit above, Cujo and Dolores Claiborne don't have chapters at all.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I missed that one. Thanks. Glad you caught that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when there's multiple chats, it's easy to overlook one. But yeah, that's awesome. Cujo's on my list. That's been on my. Honestly, I might have to get that one quick because Rattlesnake is going to be here coming out in about a month.
Yeah.
So a little less than a month now because we're now on the 27th of April. So it's like
Comes out in May, right?
It's like May 24th or something
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, it's less than a month away now. So maybe I won't have time to reread Cujo before that. But either way,
It's not that long.
no, it's not. It's not. And
I know it'll traumatize you. but-
Dolores Claiborne is also one I've never read. But I know that Kathy Bates is in the adaptation. So
Dolores Claiborne and Gerald's Game need to be read together.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So my notes here: Jonas had to have picked this spot in particular, right? Like it's far enough away that they're not gonna have anyone watching, but it's also this spot that has this cliff for him to threaten with. It feels this is all very thought out. This isn't just like a random okay, we're just far enough away. Oh look, this turnout happens to have a cliff. No, he fucking knew this
he's like,
spot.
okay, I know where we're stopping just so I can spank the children.
Yeah, like when they're in that goddamn town hall center, like he in his head he was picking that spot, right?
You know what? It would not surprise me if they've stopped here before.
Yeah.
This is halfway between where they're staying and everything like that. If one of them fucked up or something, I could totally see Jonas just stopping here and just, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And then my next note, the classic telling a subordinate to take off their glasses.
Yeah.
That never goes well.
Oh, no. No.
And then my next note, Jonas seeing this is a good thing because now they know what the boys are capable of. Suddenly throws cold water on me as a reader. I remember being happy that they'd got the better of them. They had saved Shimi, all this kind of stuff. But this was the cold water moment that I remember the first time reading it where it's like, oh, fuck, they just exposed themselves. Like they're now these coffin hunters know at least in part what these kids are capable of. So I remember that being kind of a bummer for me. The first time reading, I was all happy about it, but ultimately now they're never going to underestimate the boys again. That's not good.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Especially because we've already seen there's a larger conspiracy afoot.
Yep.
So you've now given away the one bit of like upper hand you actually had was the fact that you could have been anonymous as long as you needed to. You've just given that all away now, and for nothing really. I mean, ultimately it is in the law. I mean, again, not that they know, but we kind of understand there's something bigger going on here. So it's just like, fuck, you just expose yourself at the wrong time, right? It's like in sports, you have like a really killer play. Well, you don't want to fucking use it in the first quarter of the first.
On the third play of the game.
Of the first game of the year. Like, no, that's not how it works. You want to save. Sometimes you want the ace of spade in your sleeve.
Yep.
And then good to see Jonas taking some blame for getting bested as well. That's my last note.
Yeah. I was trying to decide where to put my note because it kind of goes with your last two notes. It is also building concern that Jonas isn't one of those high and mighty bad guys that are so dumb that they're just easily going to be bested. Yeah. They're going to take, they're boys. I'm going to take them for granted. I don't have to worry about them. No, he recognizes them as a threat. He says it right here that, he did us a favor by helping us realize what these men really are. Yeah. And that's where you're like, oh, shit, he's a crafty motherfucker. Like, oh. Yeah. And we have 3 14-year-olds that have to go against him. Yeah. Oh, that's not good.
No, that's definitely not good.
Yeah.
And then Dave in the chat said, I recommend listening to the audio version because the whole book is written in a strong dialect. And then you asked which one.
Yeah, I'm trying to clarify which book because Dolores Claiborne or Cujo. I don't remember Dolores Claiborne with a strong dialect, so that's
might be Cujo. Then.
Yeah,
because I only read Cujo. I've never listened to Cujo.
I don't think I have either.
I read Cujo when I was I don't know, 17, 16, something like that. It's been a long time, very very long time. So then jumping into the next section here, Jonas tells Clay to come down off his horse, and he does, and they all hunker down. Jonas recaps what they were made to believe about the boys and asked if either of them still believe that, and neither of them did. And that's just ultimately, I kind of skipped over recapping it, but it's the whole premise of what we talked about early on, right? Their cover story is they're coming here to do a chore, whatever. Everyone's going to infer from that they did some bad shit. Now this is their makeup for whatever. That's ultimately their grand cover story. And he kind of recaps that, but then says either you still believe it, and they both say no. Depape said that they may be rich boys, but that's not all they were. Tonight they acted like, and then he trailed off, not wanting to finish the thought. Jonas finished his thought though, and he says they acted like gunslingers. After a pause, Clay responded they are too young by years. Jonas says not too young to be apprentices, and then turned to Depape and said that he had writing to do. And he tried to argue, but Jonas said none of them covered themselves in glory that night, but he was the one that started it all. He then tells him that he was then tells him he's going to ride their back trail and ask questions until they get the answers that he thinks will satisfy Jonas's curiosity. He then says that he and Clay will wait and watch play castles, and when he thinks they can snoop without triggering something, they will. He asks if they knew why he shook hands with Dearborn, because they can't rock the boat, not with it edging towards the harbor. Latigo and his men have been waiting. Or Latigo and the men they had been waiting for will be moving towards them soon, and when they get to this area, they need to keep their peace base until they get to this area. But then he does say that no one puts a knife to Eldred Jonas's back and lives, and he tells Roy to listen. But we are not privy to then the next bit that he lays out to him, which I don't like that.
David clarifies he was talking about Dolores Claiborne. Written and dialect, so I would recommend the audio version. Which is, so I listened to the audio version, so that's why I didn't have any issues.
Oh, okay. I will say that kind of stuff annoys me. And I get it, but like stuttering Bill and it drives me fucking insane.
When you're trying to read the physical.
No,
the
audio is worse for me. Like, because when I'm reading, I just skip and say, okay, that's what he's saying, and then I move on. But in the book, the audiobook, it just keeps going and going, and I'm like, my God, man, get on with this. But I get it though. Sometimes something is written in a way that it's kind of hard to discern when it's on paper. But then if you listen to it, it's like, oh, okay, I kind of catch what's the flow of it or whatever. So the age of the boys is enough to wave off a lot of suspicion in regards to being gunslingers. But there is a suspicion now, at least. And it is, and he says they may not be old enough to be gunslingers, but maybe old enough to be gunslinger apprentices, which we know that Roland is.
We're like, shit, he figured it out.
Yeah, so it's like, oh man, well, they don't even have that fully unknown anymore. I mean, there's at least suspicion on it now. So Roy is going to be riding the boys' trail and finding out as much as he can. That makes me nervous because we did not see their trip coming here, so we don't know what they may or may not have said to the people along the trail, and if Roy... and what Roy might find, if anything. Mm-hmm. So that makes me really nervous as a reader. I remember being like, wait, what? No, I don't like that.
Don't do that.
I'd feel better if we had actually read that journey, right? Like, because then I'd be like, oh, well, I kind of know what they did and didn't say. Like, well, here, or if they did say something to the wrong person, like, well, as long as they don't talk to this guy, we're okay. Like, but to not have any of that, it makes me just kind of like, ew.
Yeah, you don't see that scene, so you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what he might find.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where my note comes in, is King's doing a great job of making these coffin hunters, especially Jonas, very menacing.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, honestly, I can't necessarily say that they're necessarily stand out from this series, because this series has done a really good job up to this point. I don't think any of the villains that we've really ran into have been like, they're not a big deal. Yeah. I feel like every time that we've kind of run into someone that was an adversary, it's been like,
oh shit.
Yeah, there's been some stress involved. So
you get to the TikTok man or Blaine, and you're just like, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's just there's enough behind them where it's like there's never a time where it just feels like, this is just like kind of a minor villain they'll be able to just get right past real easy. Yeah. Like, no, it's always been, I mean, even like Gasher is one that you may have wanted to underestimate, but then he gets him by the balls. It's like there's like he kind of wins that whole exchange initially. So it's
Roland had to bow and just like, yep, he got us.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, God damn it. So King's done a good job with this series so far. There isn't a lot of piss poor villains, but here's another set of very, very good adversaries that we're kind of worried about. Then my next note, and at some point, Farson's men will be moving in this direction, and when they get here, the boys are going to be in for a real pile of shit, it seems like. Yep. He's basically saying we got to hold pat until Latigo and his men, because they're going to be coming this direction soon.
Yeah.
So it's like that also tells us that whatever plan is afoot is sooner than later, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be after the boys are planned to leave. So this is all going to come to a head, which from stepping outside of it, it's like it very well better. This is a book. I want good shit to happen. But at the same time, as one that cares for these characters, I'm like, we've talked about it on the last episode, we don't know where like Alan and Cuthbert end up. Like, they could very well die in this story. Yeah. Like, we know that this is the furthest along the line that we've seen these characters. It's not like a spoiler where we've seen like, oh no, we saw like this in book 1, it flashed back to 10 years beyond this and Cuthbert's still there, so he's safe. No, like he's in danger. Roland's the only one that's really not. So I don't know, it's getting me nervous here.
Not to mention we've had other characters introduced to us that we care about. It's not just Bert and Alan either. It's what's going to happen with Susan and everything.
Yes.
going forward.
Yeah.
Because we got introduced to her with the ride with Roland and everything back from the coups, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, what's going to happen here with them?
And not to mention Rio, which we all love so much.
No, stop. No. No.
I love it when, like, the reaction on your face, it's almost like I punched you.
It is.
You
did just punch me.
I love when I get those reactions out of you.
You're the worst. Hashtag Ted is terrible.
My last note here, it always makes me nervous when the enemies conspire, whether it be in a book or a movie or a TV show, whatever, and we as the viewers are left out of what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because there's two...
All right, listen, men, this is the plan.
Sometimes you hear that when it's heroes, and sometimes you hear it when villains. A lot of times when it's heroes, it's kind of good because it's like whatever they're planning, you're going to see unfold, and it's better to not know. It's better to watch this beautiful plan unfold.
Yep.
But when it's the bad guys, it's like, this isn't good. Like, please tell me. Like,
Shaggy.
yeah, I don't want to be in the dark right now. Please
No.
let me know what's going on. So
Yep.
that makes me nervous that he's like, all right, listen up. And then we kind of, the way King writes it, it's almost like you're fading out and you don't hear them anymore. It's
Yep.
God damn it.
Or this would be one of those instances where the camera starts to pan back and it's the waves crashing,
Yeah.
drowns out their voices.
Yeah.
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 So that puts us in subchapter 11, which we get to see the Roland and Alan and Cuthbert get back to the bar K where they're staying. And it isn't until they're almost back that Cuthbert breaks the silence, saying that he is. It was an amusing and instructive evening, was it not? When neither Roland nor Alan replies, he leans over and talks to the rook skull on his saddle and asks if it enjoyed its evening. Dinner, a circle dance, and almost getting killed on top of it all. Lookout, of course, doesn't respond. Cuthbert says that the rook is too tired to talk, and as a matter of fact, he is too. Then he turns to Roland and says he got a good look at Jonas's eyes after he shook hands with him, and he meant to kill Roland. Roland nods, still doesn't say anything. Alan says they mean to kill them all. Roland says they will make it hard for Jonas, but they know more about them now than when they did at dinner. He stops just as Jonas had, not 3 miles away, but instead of looking out over the clean sea, they were looking over the drop. Roland is looking over at a herd moving on the drop when Alan asks what he sees. And then a quote from the book, "Trouble," Roland said, "and in our road." Then he gigged his horse and rode on. Before they got back to the bar K bunkhouse, he was thinking about Susan again. 5 minutes after he dropped his head on the flat burlap pillow, he was dreaming of her. And that's the end of the subchapter. Just that quick little bit with them. No chastising from Roland to Cuthbert for getting them into the mess or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just he knows. It's interesting to see Roland. I actually didn't take note of this, but it's interesting to see that Roland knows that they know more about them now.
Yeah.
So kind of like, oh, okay, Roland's smart enough that he figured that out. But my first note here, after all that, he starts thinking and dreaming about her instantly.
Yeah.
Like, even after the fight that they had, like the harsh words that he said to her at the dance.
Yeah, let's not lose sight of that after all this brouhaha at the Traveler's Rest.
Roland was thinking about it. That's why he wasn't at the Traveler's Rest with Bert and Alan. He had to go off by himself to think about how he had treated her. So
Yeah, indeed. So my note, Cuthbert and the Lookout never ceases to crack me up. Also, it's interesting to see this side of the scuttlebutt. They also found it informative as well. So it's you're seeing both sides of it after it all went down. So pretty great there. Also interesting that despite his humor, he noticed the look of Jonas's eyes and knows his intentions.
Yep.
So Cuthbert is not a he's not inobservant. He's able to observe as well as Roland maybe that he saw it there, because Roland would have seen it direct, right? Would have been looking at him. But when you got Cuthbert standing off to the side, or wherever it might be, and still to see that and kind of see the intention, I think it shows that like he's a sharp kid.
it is pretty fascinating when people just write off a character because they're a loudmouth. Loudmouths can be observant too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
he sees things. We've seen that with him calling Roland on his shit in book 3, I think it is. Stop holding our hands,
Yeah.
We're going with you. Stop leading us around by the noses. Kind of that little speech that he gives him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's right before they get to Tull and everything. Kind of the
Lud.
I mean, Lud. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. But
Wouldn't want Eddie there.
No.
I don't think he'd be very happy about how that went.
probably not.
So far, we've yet to see Eddie once be involved with killing that doesn't affect him in some way emotionally. So massacring a whole town, that would have not been great.
Nope. I do like the fact that Bert is too tired to talk, but yet he's the only one yammering on.
Yeah.
That's Bert for you, right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if he's kind of one of those kinds that when he's tired, he just talks more.
Yo. It's concerning when I get quiet.
And then my last one, love the connection to the young and older Roland with the trouble and in our road. Honestly, with something like that, I just don't expect that feels like an idiom, like some sort of saying. And I just don't know that a 14-year-old would have come up with that. So I'm assuming he's probably heard that from someone else. And the fact that it sticks with him all the way until, we heard it earlier in this book, looking ahead on the interstate.
The big glass palace.
Yeah, so for him to still say it so far in the future just makes me wonder, is this like something that Dad or Court said that
he picked it up from someone?
He picked it up from someone, probably someone that he respected and thought highly of, and here he is still saying it all those years later, that here he is saying it as a 14-year-old. It's kind of a fun little thing to see it at both ages. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's true. Brocky says Roland specifically asked Bert to observe at the party, so maybe he's even more observant than Roland is.
Oh yeah,
forgot about that. Good call. And then let's see. David mentions, we do know that there's been a couple mentions of Jericho Hill so far in previous books, and it says so maybe we don't have maybe not as much as unknown about this book as we thought.
Oh, okay.
Which that's it's funny though, because there's also mentions that we've had of Susan throughout the last 3 books, but it's still it's like I don't know. It's interesting. And then David said, I know they call John Farson the good man, but all I hear is John Goodman. So there we go. If we get John Farson, it should be John Goodman.
Should.
I mean, of course, I am of the belief that Farson and Flag are the same person, but I do know that Flag also can change shapes and appear as different people. And then talking about Dolores Claiborne is written in a dialect, so I would recommend the audio version. I powered through it, but I had a friend in college who stuttered, and you kind of have to power through it in real life too. And that's true. That is certainly true. And again, that's probably more to me bitching about listening to the audio book of it, where I'm just like, oh my god. And I totally get it. I know it's a real thing.
Does that really rub you the wrong way?
It just
not rub you the wrong way, but does it really bother you?
Yeah, it gets on me.
Really? I enjoy it because it's such a good performance by Steven Weber.
It certainly is. But it's just like, I don't know. It's like the Monty Python. Get on with it.
Yeah. You would not have been Stuttering Bill's friend, would you?
I mean, I don't know. That's tough to say.
I don't think you would have.
I got around quite a bit in elementary school. I was friends with a lot of different groups. I mean, I was that way in high school too. I was friends with I felt like I was kind of a chameleon that was able to float amongst all different groups.
Except for the religious ones for some reason. It's like they stayed away from the demon that you are.
Oh man, that's true. That's true.
Especially growing up in Utah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Oh, indeed. And then Alan popped in. Hi, Alan. Welcome. So now we are jumping over to chapter 7. So chapter 6 is in the books. Chapter 7 is titled On the Drop. Let's see. Jumping on into subchapter 1 of chapter 7. We got 3 subchapters to cover for this section. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So 3 weeks had passed since the welcome dinner and the showdown afterwards. There had been no trouble between the boys and the coffin hunters. The kissing moon had become the peddler's moon. Susan rode Pylon across the drop and drove him faster and faster. She barely saw the scenery around her as she was just focused on the thunder of Pylon's hooves. She wanted to outrun her own thoughts, all because she had come downstairs this morning dressed to ride in one of her father's old shirts. So we got a little bit of a Stephen King aspect there that we're getting a tease a little bit here, because we're basically starting at the later point, and then it seems like most likely we're going to rewind to what happened.
Classic King.
Classic King, indeed. So my note, time is progressing, but nothing has transpired amongst the two groups after 3 weeks, so that's probably good. That means that there wasn't any... sometimes after like a big blow up like that, both sides might have so much steam that all it takes is a smallest little thing to set them both off again. So the fact that you're 3 weeks in, I think that gives them all time to like catch their breath and I don't know, be strategic about it. So
My note here is I love the names that they give the moons: Peddler's Moon, Kissing Moon, Demon Moon. You know, all those different ones. I don't know if that's what they actually were called back, like in the olden days in our world and everything. I don't know the phases of the moon aside from like full, half, new.
Yeah,
that's what I know them as. So if that's what the real names are, from olden times, cool. If not, I love that King came up with them.
Yeah. It would be interesting. I wonder what other cultures, if they had like names for the different phases of the moon. That's an interesting question. So Susan is writing with some emotion here, and King is putting the after part first here. And it seems like we always love it when he does that.
Yeah.
And that's it. This is a very short subchapter.
I got one. You got one. It's perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Yeah, indeed. It was a short one. So jumping over to subchapter 2.
This is going to be a little bit of a longer subchapter.
And then in the chat, David said it's definitely difficult to listen through, but I figured if it happens in real life, I might as well listen through it. And it's true. And honestly, it hasn't stopped me from listening through it.
Apparently it did, because you didn't listen to it for like 15 years.
Oh, none of that now. Not that long.
How long was it?
Close to 10, maybe.
10.
Maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I exaggerated so far.
Yeah, it's kind of like freaking Under the Dome. I've actually never listened to that one. I noticed that not too long ago. I remember buying it in hardcover and shit, and I breezed through that book pretty quick. I was like, I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
But I was looking through my stuff, and I'm like, I don't have Under the Dome. I'm like, honestly, I started thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, I have never listened to that story. I've only ever read it. So, and that one has been out for a long time now.
Long time. What is that, like 2010?
Let me pull it up. I have the list up anyway. Under the Dome, 2009. So that has been a hot minute.
Dude, we're getting close to some of these books being out for 20 years. That's crazy, dude.
Yeah, I was that reminds me of another Reddit discussion. There was someone that's title was King recommendations. It was the Stephen King subreddit, and his first thing is he's like, oh yeah, I read King when I was a kid a bit, but I've really fallen off over the years, and I'm kind of just feeling like jumping back in. He's like, what are some good ones to read? I'm like, 11/22/63, like that's like the perfect thing to recommend to someone.
Yeah.
And I go and look at the ones because he lists what he actually has read, and he mentioned that.
You're like, wait, you were a kid. Oh.
It was just like a stab in the heart. I was like, oh.
Like the Yoda.
Pretty much. But then, that was 2011. So, that could easily be someone that's, 18, 21-year-old person that was, however young in 2000, or however young they would have been when they picked up 11/20. So, it hurt me, though, because I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And I clicked out of I'm not even commenting.
I can't.
I'm done. I can't do this.
Baraki says, I don't get all the hate for Under the Dome. I loved it from front to back. Don't get us wrong. We loved the book.
Yes.
The miniseries, however...
it's horrible.
It left a bad taste in our mouth. And it's very unfair that the book is getting... crap.
There's
a
lot of people I think that have let the miniseries or the series. It wasn't even a miniseries because there's multiple seasons.
Oh, that's right. It was like 3 seasons.
But they've let that affect the book, and I have not done that. Like for me, it's just a matter of like. I've honestly, like, since that's come out, like, we've started this show, I've done this whole idea of going through all the books. We've created this list and stuff. Like, when I started, I'm at 72% of King's bibliography right now. I guarantee I would have been closer to, like, 25 to 30% when we started all this. So, I've read a lot of fucking King over in that time, and I've really tried to minimize rereads as much as I can. And it doesn't hurt that, or it doesn't help that I'm, got things like Dark Tower and The Stand that I'm rereading so regularly and that are girthy. That like there's a lot of books I haven't. I mean, when I reread Mr. Mercedes trilogy back when they dropped them on Peacock, and it was the first time they were like readily accessible. I watched through them all, then I went through and read them, and that was the first time since they had published. So it's just. I would say it's hard to get around to rereads for me, except for a couple special ones I reread pretty often.
Yeah.
Dead Zone, one of my favorite books that I've read of his. I still haven't reread that. So, yes, I don't hate Under the Dome. I'm with you. It was a page turner. I think I went through that one faster than most of the close to 1,000-page books because I couldn't fucking put it down.
Yeah. It
was back when we were younger. I mean, I think I remember literally losing sleep because of that book. It's like, oh, well, I can go on 4 hours of sleep. I'll read for a couple more hours.
Yeah.
So I do love the book. Even people that shit on the ending, I love it. It's great stuff for me.
I liked it too. I remember you being like, "Dude, you got to read this," and you gave me your copy, and then someone else wanted to read it as well, and you're like, "Dude, as soon as you're done, like, get it back to me." I read like maybe like 6 or 7 chapters, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go buy my own. I just went and bought my own and gave yours back.
Plus, there's also just something great about having a hardcover you can kill someone with.
Yeah.
It's just some comfort to that.
You could drop it out of a window onto a little kid's head.
As much as I love like later, you couldn't hurt anybody with that book if you had to. If it came down to like a self-defense situation, but Under the Dome, like put that in a pillowcase and start swinging.
Under the Dome would be good to hit someone in the dome with.
I just see the Zapruder film with Under the Dome.
I'm surprised you didn't give me a comment about my joke about dropping it on a kid.
Yeah, it's Susanna would not approve. Would not approve. I mean, I think maybe a brick might do less damage than Under the Dome.
Terminal velocity. All right, so going on to subchapter 2. This is a pretty lengthy subchapter, and before we start this chapter, I wanted to ask a question because I did miss a few. We already mentioned it. I did miss a few book clubs. How much have we seen of the Aunt Cord and Susan's relationship?
We've certainly seen hints. This is going to be the biggest blow up we've seen, but there was the confrontation after Rhea, where she's like, I expected you an hour ago, like, and then there was just kind of a back and forth. There was kind of you definitely got the sense of their reputation also at the party. It's like, why is he looking at you like that? Like, and it was just immediately jumping on her, accusing her of shit. Okay. I don't think there's going to be any surprises. Although this does go further than anything we've seen before, but I think we've got plenty of
little hints.
We've gotten plenty. Yeah, there's plenty of signs that we've seen so far that this is not a great relationship.
Got it. Okay. So it's breakfast. Aunt Cord was at the stove getting a bowl of oatmeal. Susan saw things were not good the moment that her aunt looked at her. There was a twitch to her lip as a disapproving glance at the orange that Susan was peeling. Her aunt was wrinkled by the lack of silver and gold she had expected by now. And couldn't get since Rhea had decreed that Susan would remain a virgin until autumn. But money wasn't the only thing. They were sick of each other. Cord had expected to have the house to herself by now, with an occasional visit from Jonas, who she was taken with. And then I got a quote here from the book, because I thought this was just really compelling how King described this relationship between the two women. Instead, they still were. One woman growing toward the end of her courses, thin, disapproving lips in a thin, disapproving face, tiny apple breasts under her high-necked dresses with her choker collars. The neck, she frequently told Susan, is the first thing to go. Her hair losing its former chestnut shine and showing wire threads of gray. The other, young, intelligent, agile, and rounding toward the peak of her physical beauty. They grated against each other, each word seeming to produce a spark, and that was not surprising. The man who had loved them both enough to make them love each other was gone. And my first note here, as a father and everything, this is never going to end well when an adult doesn't love the child that they're raising.
Yeah.
Even if Susan's not exactly like a young child, the fact of that line there at the end from King, the man who had loved them both enough to make them love each other. So there is no love between the two of them without Pat.
Not inherent. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a terrible situation to be in.
Yeah.
And that's just, I had to stop there very early on in the subchapter because that is dark.
Yeah.
To have that pronouncement from King right here at the start.
Yeah. So my notes here, I think this gives a sense of their relationship, even if we hadn't seen, or even though we have seen tastes of it already. The fact that Susan immediately knew it was not going to go well because of Cord's disposition, it honestly reminds me of how abused kids tend to be able to read the smallest things with an abusive parent and their mood. Not to say Cord is necessarily physically abusive, but still it doesn't speak well of her either. You always hear about that with kids that like have super abusive parents where it's just like they're privy of the smallest change in their parents' attitudes and stuff like, you see that all the time, unfortunately, like throughout, whatever.
It reminds me of Beverly.
Yeah, exactly.
With her dad and everything like that. Like she knew instantly, like if it was his tone or the way he looked at her or anything. Yeah,
exactly. My next note, again with the money, with this hag, this is bad enough that she's essentially disappointed to not have more money. But what's worse is she's also wanting the house to herself. That goes to what you said. She doesn't care for Susan beyond the payday that she is going to bring her. So, not very likable.
No.
then all this aside, King shows the difference between the two and how it's going to spark trouble on occasions. Because sometimes you do have that. You have those oil and water people where they're just they're not. I mean, you throughout life you see it with couples, you see it with parents and kids. Sometimes there's the two attitudes and different personalities are too different. That they're always going to have a pop off every so often.
Spouses with in-laws is a big one that happens a ton.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you're not good enough for my son/daughter, kind of thing. And here, Cord is basically saying, like, I'm mad at you for, not completing the deal, even though it's out of Susan's hands. It's like not even her fault at all, but she's still holding it against her.
Yeah. Resenting her for it.
Exactly. And so going on, Aunt Cord asks if Susan's going out on that horse. She was sitting in a shaft of Aunt Cord was sitting in a shaft of sun she never would have sat in if Jonas was visiting. The strong light made her face look like a carved mask. She had a cold sore growing in one corner of her mouth from not sleeping and stressing. She tells Susan to eat more than the orange. Susan says it'll hold her over just fine. She starts to eat the orange faster because she could see dislike and disapproval in her aunt's eyes and wanted to get away from the table before it, exploded and began. Her aunt asks why not have a bowl of oatmeal like hers, and it will hold her until lunch. Susan thinks it looks like a bowl of mud or shit that a horse hoof had stamped down in. Then her aunt says, and I quote this from the book, "I suppose a fine young lady such as yourself can't be bothered with chores." And that's the quote. To which Susan replied she had already done them. And then to herself, she thinks, "You know this, Aunt? I did them while you were poking at the sore on your face." For a moment, it seems breakfast would end on a reasonably civil note. But then the shirt business started. And I put my note here, her aunt is already such a pleasant person.
Yeah.
Like, I have this conversation with my daughter. "Hey, are you going to eat something more than just that?" "No, I'm not hungry." "Are you sure? I don't want you to be hungry later." That's how I have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because I love and respect my daughter. I want her to be fed and have energy and, and everything like that. She's over here just like, "Eat more,"
Yeah.
grr, and just like, oh, hostile towards her,
Yeah, there might be a reason that she ended up on the second in the votes for the most hated
right?
character.
Yeah.
2019, back when we did our first March Insanity. It was her in the finals. So there's
versus Rhea,
there's
both from this book.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. My notes here, as if she actually cares about Susan's diet, more like she's trying to assert authority over her and picking whatever topic she can to flex that authority on her.
Every little thing has to be nitpicked at.
Yeah, exactly. And then my next note, Susan is wrong, though. Oatmeal is delicious. I hated it as a kid, but somewhere around her age, I grew to love it. Throw a little bit of milk and sugar in there and then get some toast for dipping, and that's a grade A breakfast.
I haven't had oatmeal in probably 20 years. I can't.
I mean,
I'm with Susan. It looks like crap, dude.
I rarely eat it, but it is one of those things where it's like, and I don't do any of that flavored bullshit. Just give me plain oatmeal.
Not maple brown sugar or cinnamon apple.
Like I said, I'll sprinkle a little bit of sugar, a little bit of milk to like coagulate it out a little bit, and then you get some toast stuff. It's delicious.
No,
I love it.
The more I learn about you, Ted, the more you surprise me.
Then my last note, the chores thing proves my earlier point. She is either trying to flex authority or is straight up looking for a fight.
Or both.
To bring up the chores. Like it's like she's got a couple knobs that she's seeing, and she's tweaking those knobs, trying to find the one that's going to cause. It's like she wants a fight. Ultimately,
yeah.
she
it's
wants
also
this
the
to
way
happen.
she says it. That's the thing that I've had conversations with people who I've like tried to mediate fights for them, and I'm like, okay, it's not that you brought this subject up. It's how you brought it up. It's how you say it.
Tone.
Aunt Cord didn't say, "Hey, did you get your chores done?" Which is, again, we're using an example here, how I talk to my daughter. Okay?
Yeah.
"Hey, did you clean your room?" "Oh, no, I forgot." "Okay, you got to do that before you go outside and play with your friends," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cord says, and this is why I quoted it, "I suppose a fine young lady such as yourself can't be bothered with chores." Like, assuming that she didn't do it, assuming that she's a bad kid and everything like that. Like,
Susan, just throat punch her.
just throw a punch.
Just throat punch. Just that'd be a good one. That flappy neck that she's got.
Yep. It's the first thing to go, right?
Brocky says it's a texture thing. Blah. So
See?
Oh,
That's why I don't like mashed potatoes.
Oh, dude,
I love the taste of mashed potatoes. I gag at the texture of it. That's the only reason I don't eat them.
I'm coming to the conclusion that I'm just not as big a potato eater as I was when I was younger.
Yeah.
A lot of different kinds of potatoes I'm just kind of grown tired of. And mashed potatoes is one of the few that I still really fucking enjoy.
Good old Thanksgiving mashed potatoes and turkey.
Yeah, make a bowl out of it and then fill it with gravy.
Yeah.
I love it. But, yeah, texture, I get it. Texture could be...
It's sad because I do like the taste of potatoes. It's just purely texture.
Oh, man. All right, yeah.
I'm gonna get some crap from that. I know people, every time they find out that I don't like mashed potatoes, I always get crap.
Hey, it's nothing like my brother when I was a kid. This kid did not like hamburgers of any kind. He wouldn't eat McDonald's. He hated pizza. Hated mac and cheese. Like all the quintessential food for kids. He hated them all.
What do you eat? Like steak or
no? I don't know. I don't even remember exactly, but I do remember when we'd be like, oh, we're gonna go out to eat, and we go to McDonald's. They'd stop and get drive-through freaking Taco Bell for him.
All right,
and we just bring it into McDonald's, and he'd eat Taco Bell while we all ate real food. I mean, real
food. Back McDonald's.
Back in the 90s, it was more like real food.
It was pretty good.
Taco Bell, nah.
So going on, Aunt Cord tells Susan that before she goes out to take off that rag she is wearing. Again, a way of saying it. Calling it a rag. Yeah. Right off the bat, like we're talking about. It's the way you say things.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the context of what you're saying, it's how you're saying it.
Yeah, as someone who's one of my mutant powers is being able to know exactly how to say something to get someone, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, you do.
I use it to my own ends.
You do, and you're horrible at it. We hate you all.
Earlier,
we all hate you.
Earlier when I slid that we love Rhea in
exactly.
there. It's great.
No, it's not. Stop
and
it.
see, she's doing the same thing.
I'm going to start calling you Aunt Cord then.
She's just doing it maliciously, whereas I do it, in a fun and jovial way.
I don't like you. Why am I doing this again?
Oh, because you love it.
Yeah, I do. So she tells Susan to take off that rag she's wearing and put on one of the new riding blouses that the mayor sent over for her. Susan interrupts, saying that the rag had belonged to her father. Ooh.
Yeah.
That's not a good look.
No.
Aunt Cord says it is too big for Susan. It is improper for her to wear a man's shirt while riding now that she has a woman's bust line. The riding blouses the mayor had sent over were in the corner of the front room because Susan didn't even want them in her room. They were silk and worth a small fortune each. She loved them for their frilly and full sleeve designed to flutter in the wind and had great floppy, foolish collars. I love that that's how King actually worded it. Floppy, foolish collars.
Yeah.
But of course, the low scoot front is all she thought the mayor cared about. And there it is.
Yeah.
Susan says her woman's bust line is of no one's interest to her, or anyone else while she's out riding. Her aunt says perhaps or perhaps not, but if someone was to mention to the mayor that they saw her riding in one of the new blouses, it would be a good look for them. Susan says, Aunt Cord says, why does she have to be so unwilling and so unfair? Susan asks, what's it matter to her? She'll have her money one way or the other after he fucks her. That's a direct quote. Aunt Cord's face was white and shocked with fury. She leans across the table and slaps Susan. She says, how dare she use that word in her house, and calls her a Spanish word for a foul-mouthed person. I pause there and say, this is not going well.
No, it just keeps getting worse.
I just have to comment real fast. I didn't take a note of this, but reading through this, I should have. She's saying it's not proper for a woman to wear a button-up men's shirt.
Yeah.
Last I checked, button-up men's shirts don't show a single iota of cleavage. Having worn one myself, I don't think that happens. Unless maybe the shirt's too small.
Yeah, that's what it'd be, is it's not cut.
And so the buttons have the gaps in them and everything like that. But it's her dad's shirt. He was a bigger guy, wasn't he? I don't see how that... And then she's telling her to put on one of these blouses from the mayor, which has a low line to show off her cleavage. It's
yeah.
Wait, what's more inappropriate for her? Come on.
But this does strike as pretty true, though, because you think of back in the more frontier days of in our world, what women could and couldn't wear while being proper, right? It's a woman couldn't wear pants.
No.
Even if they were going to ride. Things like bustles and, what are the things to
Girdle.
Say, yeah, like all that bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
So this isn't completely out of the realm of like this might actually be a real concern for them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because it isn't like this. I mean, not saying her tone or anything's right, but I'm just saying that maybe there is true like decorum that she's actually referring to.
And it could be. I just don't see that a dad shirt on a young adult woman would be too tight that we would have that separation issue. It just
it could
low cut.
It could be like not leaving much to the imagination because again,
Yeah.
it's not cut for a woman.
True.
So it could
True.
be that. I don't know. But then my note here, God forbid one sides with Aunt Cord, but I can kind of see where she's coming from. If she's going to go out ride and be seen and word makes its way back to the mayor, he could be offended. We have not really seen enough from the mayor to know what that might mean. But I don't think that Cord's concerns are entirely unwarranted. Because again, do we really know enough about the mayor? Like, is he one that would be vindictive? Would he like come back on them in some way? Like, I don't know. Again, I'm not. God forbid I have to freaking side with her, but it is just one of those
Devil's
things,
advocate kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's one of those things where it is. I mean, he's the mayor. Like, he's got some authority. Like, maybe there is some concern about what he may or may not like. Of course, I can totally see why Susan hates them and the idea of them as well. Not to mention why she might value a shirt of her dead father. So, so that's all to say that I'm not like fully siding with her. I'm just saying that we don't know enough about this mayor yet to know like, could this fuck them over? You know, could he like renege on part of the deal and short them on some money? Like, God knows. There's
See, that's where Susan's kind of making the point with what she says, that it doesn't matter. He's going to have me one way or the other. The papers are signed and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's agreed upon.
But we don't know if he's like,
So-
is he going to be one that's going to freaking abuse her? You know, like slap her around and stuff because like you disrespect. I don't know, and I know that's like leaving stuff we don't really know. But I'm just saying, devil's advocate for Cord, which devil Cord, what's the difference? You know. We don't know enough about the mayor to know what exactly she's concerned about, or maybe she is just being fucking.
I will say
worst.
that in the actual text, Cordelia is more worried about like their image towards the mayor.
Oh yeah,
not necessarily how the mayor's going to react if she's seen riding in her dad's shirt.
Yeah,
it's more of like, hey, get on his good side. Maybe he'll give us a little something extra.
Exactly, it could be that for sure as well. The other thing too is we see from a previous chapter that she ends up going riding on the drop, which I think is a little bit more like out in a way. But like, is Cord assuming she might ride through town and stuff? There's that part of it where we kind of know the future to know that she's going to eventually end up on the drop, which is kind of, there's not a lot of people there, I would imagine.
Horse drovers is basically, and that's even like Susan's point, is she's like, who's going to see me?
Yeah.
And, I didn't write it down because it wasn't important, but Cordelia does say like, well, maybe one of the drovers will see it and mention it to one of the mayor's men, and it'll get back to the mayor. And it's like, this isn't something that Cordelia's like, you have to do this. The mayor's going to see you, you know, kind of thing. It literally is her trying to pick a fight over the smallest little thing.
And which
Susan
seems about right.
Yeah, right.
And then my last note: Susan slaps Cordelia verbally and then gets physically slapped in return.
Yeah,
because that was a verbal slap.
Oh, absolutely, swearing at her like that.
Yeah, and dropping like the harsher end of words too.
Yep.
You know, as one that grew up in Utah, you know, I know there's like levels to how you can use swear words, and she went to the deep end of the well there.
Yep, one of the worst swear words that a lot of people hate,
and used it most graphically too. Like, it's not like oh fuck off, but so when he fucks me, like it's just that's. Even
it's almost a little bit worse than the other fuck that you use.
Exactly, and because ultimately that's the thing with like movie ratings. You know, PG-13 they can use fuck one time, but it can never be referring to sex. Yeah, it can't be used in that manner because that is so much worse that'll immediately make it rated R. So it's like she knew, and I think she knew she didn't. She didn't do that accidentally or out of passion. I think she was fully intending to slap Cordelia with that, and got slapped back.
And this is what she was talking about when she came downstairs, when she was thinking to herself, is that she knew that this was going to go off.
Yeah.
She could feel it, like, between the two of them.
Feel the tension.
She can't control herself when Aunt Cord pushes the buttons and flicks the switches that gets her going.
It's like Avery said, there's two powder kegs and one fat sheriff between them. Well, we just moved to another subchapter a whole different time 3 weeks later, and there's still two powder kegs that we're dealing with here.
And there's no fat sheriff in between.
Exactly. It's just the two of them.
Yep, exactly. So this is where Susan has had enough. She throws the rest of her orange in her aunt's face and pushes back from the table so hard she falls over backwards.
I love
citrus.
I love throwing the orange. That's that's glorious.
Her aunt's shadow looms over her. Susan scrambles back and gets to her feet. Cord calls her an ungrateful girl and says after all she and the mayor have done for her, that the nag she is about to go ride is a gift from the mayor. Susan screams at her aunt that the horse was theirs before. All of them were, and so was the land. Her aunt tells her to lower her voice, and this always pisses me off. As someone who does have a temper, you don't get to push my buttons and piss me off, and then when I get mad, tell me to lower my voice.
Yeah.
Like, I just, on a note here, I fucking hate people who do this.
It's like the one meme I saw where it's just like kind of bad advice. It's like,
Yeah.
if your wife's mad about something, just tell her to calm down. She'll realize the error of her ways.
Yeah,
and she'll
right.
calm
Come on. It just pisses me off that they get to push my buttons and piss me off, and then when I get mad, I'm the asshole. Like, no.
Oh, man.
It ticks me off with that. So Susan takes a deep breath and she's trying to get control of herself. She's already better than me. She sweeps back her hair, revealing the handprint on her cheek, which her aunt flinches at the sight of it, which is interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I left a mark.
Yeah.
Susan says that her father never would have allowed this. Her aunt rolls her eyes and says that Susan agreed to this all herself. And then she calls her Miss Oh So Young and Pretty. Again, that condescending little shit.
Makes you grate your teeth, doesn't it?
Ooh, it does.
It's like chewing on tinfoil.
It's like Miss Carmody all over.
Oh.
Susan cuts her off and says that she did agree after her aunt dunned her day and night. I'm assuming that means bugged her day and night, harped on her.
Yeah.
Then came to her in tears, which her aunt vehemently denies. Susan says how quickly you forget, and that by tonight she'll have forgotten slapping me at breakfast. The whole time Susan has been using her thee to refer to her aunt, these and thous and kind of things.
Yeah.
And Cordelia hates that because that's her way of talking. So
Yeah.
again, Susan, like you said, slapping her aunt every
Yeah.
time she says it and everything. So,
Oh, yeah.
One thing I did leave out of my notes here, but I'm just remembering now. The thing that set Susan off is that if we go back up, Cordelia says, how dare she use that word in her house?
Yeah.
This is Cordelia's house, whereas really this is Susan and her dad's house.
Yeah.
She had nowhere to go. They brought her in
Yeah.
from the cold and everything like that.
Yeah.
And now it's all of a sudden her house,
Yeah.
even though Susan's the one making the deal to keep the house and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
That's not a manipulative, narcissistic kind of person,
Yeah. Brocky says, I think Susan let herself be convinced that her father would have wanted her to do this with the mayor, but deep down she knows her father would have been ashamed of her. And
There's
then,
actually a line about that coming up.
yeah, then he says her use of the F word here revealed how she really felt about the arrangement deep down, and it was meant to hurt Cordelia. Yeah, indeed. Because again, it's using that word in the most graphic way possible.
Yep.
And about this situation, it's not just this like obscure it's like when he fucks me, like that's a whole like that's putting a fucking point on it, like a like when they say putting too fine a point on it, well that's a fucking knife point that she just put on that and stabbed Cordelia with it.
Exactly. And my note here is just nothing like turning something back on someone like Cordelia to get under their skin when you're fighting.
Oh yeah.
Just like Cordelia did to her, telling her to calm down. Susan comes right back and is these and thous back at Cordelia.
Yeah. So the idea of a gift being taken from the family and then given, or the idea of these gifts are things that belong to the family and then were taken and given back as gift. That's pretty shitty.
It's not. The worst part is some of these things, like the horse, it's not even gifts. This is payment for him making her his gilly.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can't pay the taxes here. Let's take your horse. Oh, what's that? You're going to be my whore? Sorry, gilly. They're not whores.
Yeah.
Gilly, great. Here's your horse back. It's a gift from me to you. No, it's a payment. No, that was mine to begin with. That's what Susan is very upset about.
Yeah.
And that's what she says. The land, the horses, all of this was ours before.
Yeah.
They took it from us.
Yeah. And then my last note for this section, and the orange thrown at Cord's face, not nearly enough. A brick would have been more what she deserved.
We should have used Under the Dome.
Yeah, we have virtually nothing likable about this woman in the 3 or 4 times we've seen her so far in this story. In fact, the opposite. She's just fucking terrible.
She's the worst.
And I feel like every single scene we're getting with her, she gets worse. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like she's bad to start, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and it's just like, oh my God, man. Like, this woman is driving me to drinking.
Oh, yeah. Like, you just want to ring something.
Yeah. Yeah, like a Billy Bumbler.
No, you stop that. You stop that.
You can't throw a softball over the plate like that and expect me not to.
Hashtag Peter is terrible. Susan goes on with the these and thous, and then I got a quote here from the book. Her rage was at the flood and would not be turned aside. So that just shows you how mad Susan is here.
Yeah.
Susan says that Cord wept and said they would be turned out and sent west and never see their homestead or Hambry again. The land would be given back along with the horses, and that Susan would be a mother. This is what Cordelia is begging Susan to agree to this. This is what she was saying to her.
Yeah.
All of these would be Susan's, and for what cost? To sleep with him while his wife of 40 years is just down the hall. Her aunt says if it's money she wants, then she shall have it. Aunt Cord turns to her purse and starts to fumble with it, but her emotions quickly lose speed and conviction. There's a mirror hung where Susan could see her aunt's face, and what she saw was a mixture of hatred, dismay, and greed. All of that made Susan's heart sink. She tells her aunt that she doesn't want the money since it pains her Cordelia so much to let it go. She doesn't want whore's money. Her aunt whips around and says it isn't whore money. That some of the greatest women in history were gillies, and some of the greatest men were born of gillies. Susan rips one of the silk blouses off the hanger and holds it up and says, then why does he send me these whore clothes? She throws it at her aunt, and just like the orange says, she throws it at her just like the orange, and says to put it on herself and spread her legs for him if she fancies. Susan then turned and hurled herself out the door. Her aunt yells after her not to go thinking foolish thoughts. Foolish thoughts lead to foolish deeds. And it's too late for that. Susan knew it was too late. No matter how fast she rode her horse pylon along the job, she couldn't outrace her knowing that she agreed, and that no matter how, this is the line that I was talking about responding to David's thing in the chat about how her dad would feel. Knowing that she agreed, and that no matter how horrified her dad would have been at her situation, he would see one thing. She had made a promise, and promises must be kept. Hell awaited those who would not do so.
Yeah.
So we know that's what I was talking about, David, is that there's a line there where it's like perfectly clear where her dad would stand. He would be horrified that his daughter's in this situation of becoming the mayor's gilly. But she promised. She has to keep her word. Because to them, you go to hell if you break those promises.
Yeah.
That's like the lowest form for them.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, it's I think it was Baraki that what you.
Oh, it was Baraki. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying David, but it was Baraki. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's a lot.
Yeah. I just remember being blown away the first time I was reading this. I was so young, high school, and hadn't done much studying of our own history. This all seemed so foreign to me, to have a girl sell herself.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard of royal marriages. You know, the King of Spain has his daughter marry the King of France's son, and they form a union. Their countries become stronger together, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the idea of just, like...
What is the word, dowry?
Yeah, I expected dowry. There's a story, growing up religious, there was a famous story where it's a dad selling his daughter, but the dad's doing the selling. I want 10 cows, is what he says to the suitor. And the suitor's like, okay, 10 cows it is. And then the dad comes back later seeing the daughter transform under the husband's loving care, because the dad was abusive and a piece of shit. That the son, he comes back to the son-in-law now, and he's like, I should have got 50 cows from you. But, you know, it's just like, I've never really, like, heard of a culture where a woman's just like, yeah, buy me.
Yeah.
You know,
like
how
property,
much?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just terrible. I just remember, like, I was maybe 16 or 17 the first time I read this. Naive little Peter, growing up in a religious home and everything, reading this and everything, and just being, like, blown away that a girl, you know, my older sister was about Susan's age at this time.
Yeah.
And just being like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
Yeah.
This was worse than Lud for me at the time.
Yeah.
Like, everything that happened in Lud was terrible. This was somehow worse for me.
Yeah.
Just with how old I was and not having much world experience and everything. It was such an eye-opener for me to see, like, how this world is.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it's natural. It's done. Gillies are a natural thing that happen all the time.
Yeah, Roland is from the line, a Gilly line of Arthur Eld.
Exactly.
So, unfortunately, once again, we have to say Cord is not wrong in that element of,
No, but
like,
again,
Gillies don't mean
Yeah.
dishonor necessarily. Like that again, like right now, the only thing in this world that connects to Arthur Eld is Roland's lineage, and Roland's lineage is from a Gilly. So,
and from like the highest in the land, Arthur Eld himself.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. There is no like true born, like legitimate like line of Arthur Eld that still exists. No, this is all that's left is one that is from a Gilly.
From Gillies, yeah.
So the idea of them losing everything because Pat died speaks about the society a bit. I'm sure there may have been some of it may have been taxes, but with this mention of them losing everything and being allowed to continue mostly on as two unwed women, so the mayor probably robbed them beyond taxes because the man of the house was dead. Also makes you wonder how much of that holding them up, basically holding them up like highway robbery was about putting them in a situation where marrying Susan to him was their only option.
Yeah.
Was it all manipulation to get his hands on her?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a scene that's already happened where Susan remembers the mayor looking at her when she was too young.
Yeah. She still is.
She still is.
She's like 16, I think.
Yeah. In our culture, she's too young.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, it's I don't know. It adds a layer of disgustingness to this. It's already a disgusting situation.
And then the creep factor also, because I wasn't here for it, but the creep factor where he like after the party, I still remember that even though I haven't read it for a while. Where he like, what is he like, pounce on her in the hallway or something like that.
I think he approaches her, but yeah. I think there's
she gets saved by someone, I think.
Yeah,
but he pounces on her and like is like groping her and stuff like that.
I think you're thinking of something else.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. What else do you got here?
Oh, I love the Aunt Cord digging for money and slowing down because Susan seeing the greed on her face. Just so cinematic. She's like, "Fine, you want money? I can't give it up. I can't. It's mine."
Yeah.
That internal struggle for Cord.
Yeah.
Just goes to show you just like how fucking disgusting she is as a human being. You said it earlier a couple notes ago about just like it's all about the money with her.
Yeah.
Like she can't even like throw one gold coin at her niece here to make a point.
Yeah.
She couldn't even do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my last note for this, the usage of her father to manipulate her is so fucking gross. I think it happened once before, but it's just nasty to think about. Yeah, it's just, just throwing like, your father would disapprove of you, like going back. It's just, that's like, manipulation. There's a lot of manipulation involved here. But that, like, again, you've already mentioned it too. Like, this should be a family member. That should be someone that like loves and protects
them.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's
we did not rehearse that.
and she's ultimately not. She's ultimately manipulating her. Towards this,
and it's for her gain.
Yeah,
it's not like Susan's getting all of the money.
No,
Aunt Cord is.
Yeah, Susan will end up being in the mayor. There's probably plenty of wealth and circumstance that goes with that, but ultimately the payout money is all going to be Cordelia.
Yeah, and Cordelia saying that it's her house and the land will be hers and everything like that.
Yeah.
That just kind of shows you Susan's just a means to an end.
Yeah, which is terrible.
Ugh.
So we got one more subchapter. We're running lower on time than I thought we might, but let's go ahead and jump into subchapter 3. So Susan looked back and saw that she had ridden nearly a mile and slowed down. She let out a breath for the first time and noticed the day's beauty. Gulls circling the hazy air off the west, high grass all around, flowers in every shaded cranny. Her emotions subsided a bit, and she spoke the name Will Dearborn and shivered at the speaking of his name, even though there was no one to hear her but Pylon. She then kisses her wrist where the blood beat the closest to the surface. It was a surprise to her because she didn't expect to do it. She then spat Will had been responsible for all too much upset in her life these last 3 weeks. Him and his unsettling blue eyes and his judgmental attitude. She had thought back to his words at the welcome dinner, and her blood sang with anger and shame. How dare he presume to judge her, one who grew up in luxury with servants to tend to his every whim, so much gold that he likely didn't even need it because they would be given things, all the things he needed. How would a boy like that know about the hard choices she had to make, or how could he understand that she didn't make those decisions at all, but had been carried to them like a kitten by the scruff of the neck? But still, he would not leave her mind. In fact, he had been the unseen third in the fight with Cordelia this morning, and she knew another thing that would upset Aunt Cor to no end. Will Dearborn had not forgotten her either. So that is actually it for the subchapter. I do have some notes to talk about, but that's I don't know, just so it does at least show not only is she still thinking of him, but I'm actually glad there's still some anger there, because ultimately, again, there's nothing that she just outlined there that she's not right about. He has no fucking clue about any of this.
No, and especially where he's come from. It's the same thing for like us. We don't know anything about like third world countries. To go there and judge them for how they're surviving and stuff like that. It would be the same thing here. Yeah. He doesn't know what she's going through, what her life would be if she didn't make this decision. He has no idea. Yeah. He's just got that high society look down his nose at her kind of thing. Yeah. Mentality.
Yeah. And then David said, this is why I can't stand her a lot, much more than I can't stand the witch. At least Rhea owns it.
Yeah.
So that's true. Like, there is an element to that where I've kind of wondered if we were actually to go through and debate Cordelia versus Rhea. I know that was 2019 that we had that vote, but I do kind of wonder if Cordelia, if you really thought about it, I think Cordelia could win that vote. I really do.
If you sat down and we had a kind of like a closing argument kind of thing like we have on the other show, where you take Cordelia and I take Rhea, I'd be confident that I'd put up a good fight, but I don't know if I'd win.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. Like a lot of people hate Rhea because of what she does later. And I know we're not talking spoilers and stuff like that.
Even the inspection's pretty bad.
Even the inspection's pretty bad. But Cordelia right here in just a few, like you said, I wasn't here for those other ones, but even just a few times that we've seen her, none of them have been good.
No.
Nothing good comes from Cordelia.
It seems like she gets worse every time she shows up. And then David said, Frank reads this part and some of Susan's parts so well for a dude who's not a 16-year-old girl. Yes. Oh, yeah. All hail Frank Muller.
Oh, yeah.
He's God. He was, the best.
Yeah, right.
He was the best, but absolute wonderful narrator. And he does so great at voicing.
So good.
Like these different characters of different worlds, different accents, and they all just seem so distinct. There's never a time where you're like, well, I don't know. Like sometimes you get, I don't even think you get it that much nowadays, but back in the old days when audiobooks were far more niche things, like you would just get people that are very dry and monotone, like whatever. But nowadays, like they do a really good job with them. Yeah. And there's never a time where you're like, well, I don't know what's going on here. I'm kind of getting confused. Like, no, they got world-class people doing this
They've
stuff.
gotten to the point where it's not just someone who can read for 13 hours at a time. They got performers.
Yeah.
Like, you look at it, Will Patton's an actor.
Yeah.
You know Steven Weber's an actor.
What's funny is a lot of
those are two of my favorites.
Yeah, there's a lot of these.
Outside of Dark Tower, of course.
As I've looked into a lot of these narrators, because I'll read, listen to a book, and I'll just go look them up just for the fuck of it. It's crazy how many of them actually are or were actors previous to being narrators.
Yeah.
So it's true.
You put on these performances, and they're phenomenal because they're not only doing it as one character, which is a typical actor's job, is to play one character. Yeah. They're playing the entire book.
Yeah. So. It's like those things you see with like the Simpsons cast where they're like on like a Conan O'Brien show or
Dad
something.
cast.
And he just flips through like multiple
all
voices,
the different ones.
And it's just watching it. It's like Alien. It's like, that shouldn't be real.
You see like their mouth change just a little bit, but then it's a completely different voice coming out. It's unreal.
Yeah. Let's see. And then David said he's narrating the clearing at the end of the path now. Indeed.
I honestly, I forgot. I'm sorry.
No, he's still with us through these performances. So
he will live up forever.
And then my notes here. So her anger over Roland's words have not really died down in the 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Which good. I'm actually again, as a reader, I'm glad because those were pretty nasty things for him to say.
Horrible.
So if she had just gotten over it, like that would have been a little bit like,
oh, come on.
I don't know, man. That doesn't seem like she should have gotten over that.
But also at the same time, hearing the sound of his name on her lips makes her shiver and then kiss her lips and everything like that. But then right after that, we see it swing back to anger. She swears and spits, and remembering what he said to her at the dance, like cursing his name.
Yeah.
She's like, Will Dearborn, fuck you.
Yeah.
She swings so fast.
There's a duality.
Which is a teenage girl. I
Yeah,
mean, like, let's be honest. I mean, that's not just, let's be honest. That's every teenager, not just girls. Men do the same thing.
That's what you're in for here pretty soon, sir.
Dude, don't say that. Oh, don't you say that.
And then David said Will Patton is great, but only if you're wearing headphones. That dude does not raise his voice, and that's true. Can he raise his voice? I wonder if that's even a thing.
If it's possible.
Yeah, even as I'm like flashing through some of the movies I've seen him in, I don't think I've ever heard him with like an elevated
He's
voice.
a calm dude.
Yes.
All right. He plays a chill guy.
Yeah.
You got 2 more notes.
Yeah, my notes here. So it's so easy to see Roland's perspective, or it's so easy to see Roland's perspective for me. But then you get to this part, and it makes you really feel for Susan a lot more and the predicament that she's been put in.
Yeah,
at least for me, like
Yeah.
when I'm reading this, I'm not far from Roland's age. I'm a boy, so
Yeah.
it would have been easier for me to put myself in his place. But King does a great job here, to where it kind of like, grabs the hook and pulls you in the other direction, where it's like
pulls the blinders you have on and makes you open up to see Susan's full scenario here, the situation that she's in with her Aunt Cord.
Yeah.
Basically, like your next note. Read your next note.
Also, Aunt Cord is fucking terrible, as you can infer that she is the adult cat that is taking kitten Susan by the scruff.
Like, that's just terrible that an adult, and we've seen this in real life.
Yeah.
Where an adult influences a child into being horrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible. I mean, we've seen this all throughout history, where people take children and brainwash them effectively.
Yeah.
And everything. And there's monsters like that. Aunt Cord's one of them.
Yeah.
You can see her manipulating a child for her personal gain.
Yeah.
And this is her niece. This is someone, this is family. This is blood.
Yeah.
I could never imagine doing this. And I have 3 nieces just on my side of the family, not counting the entire huge family that's my wife's side of the family. I couldn't imagine doing that to any of them.
Yeah.
Convincing them at 16 to become someone's gilly? Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild.
Mind-boggling, right?
Yeah. But that is it for this episode. That wraps us on the discussion. There is no spoiler section, like I mentioned. This stuff's all very self-contained. There's not a whole lot to talk about. And I'm not going to say that's going to continue through all the flashbacks. There will be times I think we're going to get spoilers discussions, but there hasn't been anything here recent. It kind of reminds me of like the Blame the Mono section. I don't think we had any spoiler sections there either, because it's like what we're reading is so fucking self-contained and good. There's really not a whole lot else to connect to the rest of the series in the same way that some other stuff is. So let's go ahead and hit the outro stuff real quick. If you want to find us on any of the podcasting services of your choice, you can do that and subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those services. You can join us for the live streams here on youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. On the YouTube side, if you could like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, we'd appreciate that. It'll save us from having Rhea show up in our rooms at night.
See, that's the thing, is I'm not scared of Rhea in like a physical sense. Like, I could drop kick her and she'd die.
But if you're laying in bed, she can get the jump on you. Plus, Ermont might be around. Or Musty. The fucking, was it 6-legged cat?
6-legged and split-tailed cat.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can do that, we'd appreciate that. Find the show notes and everything you need over at darktowerpalaver.com. And then it's the Patreon is over at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. And if you want to contact the show, Peter can let you know the ways to do that.
Send us an email. I haven't asked you. How's the email bag look?
I actually didn't check over this episode because there's usually almost nothing for these, but I
look that up while I give the rest of it. Email us, show@darktowerpalaver.com, and then our Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Our Blue Sky is @darktowerpalaver.bsky.social. Our Facebook is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And then check out our merchandise, tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver.
Indeed. It looks like the let's see, is this already getting some spam in this one too.
No.
I don't know how they find it. It's just, but no, I think it looks like the mailbag is still empty. So if you have an email, this is a perfect time to send it. We'll be back again in 2 weeks. So we're still technically going to be off schedule until mid next month, where we get caught up. But 2 weeks from now, we'll be back for Roundtable. We'll catch up on all the fun stuff that's been happening in the Stephen King world, and then we still got some time for Mr. Flanagan to go ahead and
Drop some news.
Drop us some Dark Tower news, for God's sake.
Something.
But yeah, until then, we'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, everyone in the chat, thank you all for joining, and thanks for being part of the conversation. It's a lot of fun. I love covering this stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Traveler's Rest, that's such a fun section to read, but then you get to this part and you have to listen to or deal with Cordelia. Like, it would be worse if there was a Rhea subchapter mixed in here. That would have been.
I'm glad there's not much of her.
Yeah, but yeah, it's great to have you all with us. We'll see you in a couple weeks, and if you're joining us on the other show, we'll see you in in probably 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
All right, see you guys.
Bye, everyone.